I want to first thank Kenya for hosting the 2024 U.S.-Africa Nuclear Energy Summit, affectionately known as USANES. I'm not quite sure how well that flows, but we'll call it USANES here now. I should note, I really enjoyed interacting with the colleagues from across Africa at the first successful USANES in Ghana last year, and at a prior visit to Kenya last year as well in Mombasa, the training session for the IAEA. So really enjoyed getting to interact here more at the continent. I should also say I really think the thought-provoking engagement around the prospect of continued expansion of nuclear energy in Africa at only the second USANES is really electrifying to witness. I think our opening session really showed that well. In fact, I did want to note, I really appreciated the comment from our colleague from the IAEA that made earlier this week, and Rick kind of echoed it again today. But early in the week, he noted he continually gets the question to ask, is Africa ready for nuclear energy? And as he noted, he responds very positively, yes, he thinks they're ready. And I strongly agree with that as well. In fact, I think that was well echoed by Nana earlier this morning, where I like these quotes, he says, Africans can do it. And Bill's comment earlier this morning as well on those same lines, saying, why not Africa? They really are ready. In fact, when I start thinking about it, I think probably the more important question to ask regionally here is, in fact, not just regionally, but I'll say in the United States and all as well, is the question to ask is, can the region meet its potential for economic growth and energy security without clean, firm, secure nuclear energy? And I think in the U.S., we battled with that question for a number of years, and we've really come to this, resounding negative response to that. No, you can't, meet it without that. And we look forward to working with Africa as you start addressing that question. How do you do this if you're not going to have nuclear energy? So, like I say, in the United States, we've really come to that conclusion for a variety of reasons. First to note, nuclear energy is the number one source of clean baseload electricity in the United States, providing consistent power from everyday households to critical industries, 24/7, round-the-clock operation. The United States' 94 operating reactors provide nearly 20% of our total electricity generated in the United States, and it's the largest source of clean energy, at nearly 50% of our clean energy generated in the United States. As you all know probably, the United States has a long history with nuclear energy. From our first commercial deployment of a plant in Shippingport, Pennsylvania, to the recent commercial operation of the two Westinghouse AP1000s at the Vogtle site in Georgia. Nuclear energy in the United States has truly been a critical electrical resource for nearly 70 years, and our nuclear energy has been an integral part of our economy. The U.S. nuclear energy directly employs nearly 100,000 people in high-quality, long-term jobs. This number climbs to almost 500,000 when you include the secondary jobs. Nuclear industry workers' salaries are generally about 50% higher on average than those of other electricity generating sources, providing a large source of high-paying jobs for their immediate communities and a tax base for schools and other community service. Further, the workers are also key active members of the communities and where they live. And it's important to note, nuclear power plants can operate up to or even more than 80 years. So a nuclear power plant can provide jobs for multiple generations of workers. Beyond the direct nuclear power plant, a thriving nuclear energy sector also enables a robust supply chain, benefiting a number of different industries, such as steel, concrete, and advanced manufacturing, among others. Additionally, a thriving nuclear industry promotes STEM education and careers, encouraging innovation and technology advancement beyond just the nuclear industry and all as well. So these are just a few, and I should also step back and look at the Vogtle site is worth noting. So for the construction of that plant, which occurred over a number of years, over 35,000 workers were trained for the construction operations alone throughout the duration of that plant. So again, these are huge job creations, huge economic boons. So these are just a few of the points on the benefits of nuclear energy brings in the United States and can in Africa as well. And I encourage you to speak to some of our U.S. industry participants that are presenting at the summit and hear from them some of the benefits firsthand. So as we look at the global nuclear energy landscape, we see a growing group of nations, many of which are represented here from Africa, that are considering nuclear energy. They understand that nuclear energy reduces their nation's dependency on imported energy sources, enhancing energy security, which we really have found out over the last several years is national security as well, and economic independence, benefiting both the local and regional industries. Furthermore, these nations know that nuclear energy is a crucial element needed to confront the climate crisis. During COP28, as has been noted already, the United States, along with more than 20 other nations, took a monumental step toward the expansion of nuclear energy and launched a declaration to triple nuclear energy by 2050. The core elements of this declaration include working together to advance these ambitious goals, inviting shareholders of international financial institutions as well to encourage them to allow the inclusion of nuclear energy in energy lending policies, which will be very important for this expansion as well. The United States knows that this will be challenging, but I'll note it is our goal as well in the United States. We think we need to triple our amount of deployment from around 100 gigawatts now to 300 gigawatts by 2050. So let's talk about what the United States is doing to enable that goal domestically, which then also translates internationally as well. So importantly, the first step to to enable this growing is to stop the shrinking. As I think Todd noted earlier today, there's been a lot done now to stop the closures of plants. So we can't allow plants to close and lose that source of clean base load electricity. That's whether it's in the United States with our 94 reactors or the 400 reactors internationally as well. Domestically, we have now been given the tools to keep our reactors operating. The Civil Nuclear Credit Program is a strategic investment through our bipartisan infrastructure law, which was referenced earlier today, to help preserve the existing U.S. reactor fleet. And a resounding success for that program, the Civil Nuclear Credit Program, earlier this year, the Department of Energy announced the signing of a credit award and payment agreement with Pacific Gas and Electric, which finalizes the term for up to a $1.1 billion credit payments for the Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant in California to keep that plant up and operational. I think that's worth a clap. Because I'll note, having worked in this field now for approaching 40 years, I never thought we would turn around the decision to shut down the Diablo Canyon. I also never thought we would restart plants. But also, the Department of Energy recently announced a conditional commitment of up to $1.52 billion for a loan guarantee to Holtec Palisades to finance the restoration and resumption of service of an 800 megawatt electric nuclear generating station in Michigan. This project aims to bring back online the Palisades nuclear plant, which ceased operations in May of 2022, and to upgrade it to produce baseload clean power until at least 2051. Again, that was something I never thought we would do, was restart. And I'm hoping that we will have a number of additional restarts also announced here in the near future as well. So beyond the existing fleet, we also need to deploy. We need new reactors out there as well. And there have been a number of successful developments in this area. As already noted, we were very excited to have the two AP1000s, Generation 3 Plus reactors, now up and operational and running effectively in Georgia. And I'll note these plants, the AP1000 series, I think is, Rita's out here somewhere, she can correct me if my numbers are wrong, but they're already running at capacity factors of 92% for the fleet of the AP1000s out there as well. So these plants are up and functioning very well right now. The Department of Energy also recently issued a notice of intent for Generation 3 Plus small modular reactor programs. We're looking at investing in around $700 million to move forward that. The primary focus of this program is to combine both federal and non-federal government resources to help develop a credible and sustainable pathway to fleet-level deployment of Generation 3 Plus SMRs. So that's reactors like the Westinghouse AP300, GE's BWRX-300, Holtec's SMR, and NuScale's SMR as well. So we like to be able to move those and really deploy them, not just once, but be able to deploy a fleet. So we want to get to the nth-of-a-kind deployments pretty quickly so we can get beyond that first-of-a-kind hurdle out there. Addition to the recently Generation 3 Plus SMR program, the Department of Energy's ongoing Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program has been working to speed the demonstration of advanced reactors through cost-shared partnerships with the U.S. industry. This includes work that's already been noted with X Energy and Dow Chemical on high-temperature gas reactor deployment in Texas, and TerraPower sodium-cooled natrium reactor deployment in Wyoming. Also want to note and praise our colleagues from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that are here as well. We were very happy that TerraPower's natrium reactor their construction permit was submitted to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission recently and docketed in May, so they're moving forward on the licensing process there as well. Also in the advanced reactor space, we're also pleased that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in December issued a construction permit for Kairos' molten salt cooled reactor, this case being a test reactor, to go forward with construction for that reactor in the Tennessee area as well. So we do believe small modular reactors, along with microreactors, will be online within the decade, offering some unique capabilities because of their simpler and compact designs. Due to these unique capabilities, utilities and communities in the United States and around the world will have more options to deploy nuclear power to power their local and regional economies. For example, small modular reactors are right sized for smaller grids and to replace aging and retiring fossil plants. The formal fossil plant communities could take advantage of existing infrastructure and existing highly skilled workforce to ensure that these former fossil fuel energy plant jobs are maintained through the deployment of SMRs. And in fact, in general, studies we released from the Department of Energy indicate that you actually have an increased number of jobs and higher salaries at those sites as well with the conversion from coal to nuclear in those sites. So no matter what the future nuclear energy landscape looks like, we do need to ensure that we have fuel for today's reactor fleet as well as the growing fleet of the future. On this front, the United States has taken several actions to secure our civil nuclear fuel supply and ensure a supply of nuclear fuel for future advanced reactor designs. On May 13th of this year, President Biden signed into law the Prohibiting Russian Uranium Imports Act. This was a bipartisan bill which put in place a prohibition on the import of Russian uranium products into the United States, and it recently came into force on August 11th of this year. In June, in response to that, the Department of Energy issued a request for proposals to expand domestic low-enriched uranium production capacity in the United States, drawing from funding that Congress provided us roughly about $2.72 billion in funding to do that. In addition, Congress has already provided us around $700 million to establish a supply of high-assay low-enriched uranium for many of the advanced reactor needs as well. This investment, paired with this long-term ban on enriched uranium imports from Russia, is pivotal to reestablishing a secure fuel cycle for the United States and our partners as well. The international fuel supply chain space, we are also excited to celebrate the 1 anniversary of what we've termed the Sapporo 5. We celebrated that 1-year anniversary this past spring. The Sapporo 5 partners, which are the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, France, and Japan, are working together to support the secure and stable supply of fuels for their operating reactor fleets of today and tomorrow, and to establish a commercial fuel market that's free from Russian influence. Through our collective efforts, the Sapporo 5 have quickly moved commitments to action by investing over $5.6 billion to establish a global commercial nuclear fuel market for our current and future fleets that is, again, free from the influence of malign actors. With the strong bipartisan support that we have for nuclear energy and the growing needs for both energy security, which, as we've already seen strongly, is national security, and to meet our climate goals, it is truly an exciting time for nuclear energy. We are excited for the opportunity for domestic deployment and equally excited to work with our partners to help enable their energy security and meet their climate goals as well. In closing, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak at this important summit. In the United States, nuclear energy has played a critical role in providing baseload power for our industrial base, while also being an engine driving local economies and national innovation. We know nuclear energy will continue to play these roles in the future, and that its continued global expanse will also bring these benefits to any nation deploying nuclear energy, including those here in Africa. And again, as was noted by the Principal Secretary and earlier in his comments, we do look forward to very much walking together on this journey to move forward on the increased deployment of nuclear energy. So thank you very much, and I believe we'll turn it over to Dr. Ford for the first panel.
Dr. Goff, thank you so much for such excellent remarks that I really going to set up a great conversation with this panel of experts. And so I'd like to first introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Gordon, and I'm the director of the Atlantic Council's Nuclear Energy Policy Initiative. And I'm so delighted to be here with my fellow panelists, and I'd like to introduce them as well. Dr. Rian Bahran, Assistant Director for Nuclear Technology and Strategy at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Professor Lisa Marshall, President of the American Nuclear Society. Dr. Jatia Hart, Chief Science Officer at the National and Homeland Security Directorate of the Idaho National Laboratory. And Mr. Donald Hoffman, President and Chief Executive Officer of Excel Energy Services. And so, building a little bit on Dr. Goff's remarks, I think that we often talk about how the U.S. government, academia, and the national laboratory system have all helped the U.S. nuclear energy industry. But today, for this conversation, I would like to shift us a little bit and talk about how the nuclear energy industry has helped the United States government build international partnerships, how it's built careers for university graduates, and how it's strengthened the national laboratory system. I'd also like for this conversation to highlight industrial benefits and opportunities for innovation and how we can work together across sectors and internationally. So, Rian, I'm delighted to start with you. Talk to us a little bit about international civil nuclear cooperation and how U.S. civil nuclear leadership has bolstered international cooperation for peaceful use.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you to everybody, for the organizers for bringing together this multi-stakeholder group from our two continents. You know, for those of you that may not know, this event was actually designated as a deliverable by both President Biden and President Ruto during the state visit and dinner earlier this year, which celebrated and deepened ties between our two nations, including enhancing our partnership on clean energy and resilience, which of course includes deepening U.S.-Africa nuclear industry cooperation. So, I work in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, where we have a mission in that organization to strengthen science and technology and innovation aimed at our world's greatest aspirations. We in the government know that it takes an entire ecosystem, both public and private, to accomplish big things. And I'll note that in the United States, our public-private investment combined, the latest number that we have, I think, from maybe 2 years ago, was $800 billion. That's 3.5% of our GDP in the United States. And it's that type of investment that's paved the way for what we call an innovation economy, which has really enabled our nuclear industry to lead the world in nuclear innovation at a time of significant technological and market transformation. So we start with technology and science, and where we are today is truly revolutionary, advanced, versatile nuclear reactor technologies that have benefited from, again, decades of U.S. investments, primarily from the Department of Energy Office of Nuclear Energy, in cutting-edge science and R&D. These advanced reactors, as Dr. Goff mentioned and others, have a smaller footprint. They could be less costly if you can build enough, and provide greater safety. Things like size of resilience enhanced, smaller emergency evacuation zones. And so they're not only more flexible and versatile, but they come in a different range of sizes, which makes them, as others have noted, really conducive to provide options, including for the continent as countries embark on a journey of evaluating what are their energy requirements. And so I'm really excited to note that U.S. technology continues to be at the leading edge, and it's poised not only to provide clean, resilient electricity, but in addition, it's poised to decarbonize many other industrial sectors, And so you've heard the words desalination, you've heard things like hydrogen production. Indeed, nuclear energy, which in my mind is the highest energy density source in the world, can provide not just that clean, resilient energy, but can open up all these applications that may be essential. I'll just note on a personal note, I was born in Yemen, which is probably one of the first countries that will run out of water. And so unlocking nuclear energy potential for these types of applications, not just industrial applications, but really to be able to provide required and important services for countries. In addition to their versatile, they can unlock these applications, U.S. technologies do possess the highest standards of safety and security in non-proliferation. We think that's important, and I'm excited to note, as Dr. Goffin also mentioned, that we are on the cusp of building quite a few of these advanced small modular reactors by the end of the decade. To me, that data point is the culmination of the fact that we are at a tipping point for advanced nuclear technology. So that sets the stage, that technology sets the stage for this interest, this global interest in these clean electrons. I was fortunate to join many of you in Brussels earlier this year at the first ever leader-level nuclear energy summit. There's been a nuclear security summit in the past, but this is the first time we had leaders from over 30 countries at presidential level talking about nuclear energy. And it was interesting, if you read the proposed statement, it's on the webpage, it talks about fully unlocking the potential of nuclear energy and enabling the early deployment of nuclear technology. But the most kind of interesting thing to me being there was every single country statement, as has been mentioned before, the discourse was no longer, do we need nuclear? It's how much and how fast. And so we are in the United States, as Dr. Goff mentioned, and I'll talk probably a little bit later, doing everything that we can to enable and accelerate domestic deployment in the United States, to get to fleet mode deployment, and that will provide quite a few options, quite a few technologies to countries around the world. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Rion, thank you so much for that incredible overview. And Lisa, I'd like to go to you. Tell us a little bit about your role at the American Nuclear Society, and also tell us about how you engage with the U.S. nuclear energy industry.
Certainly. So the American Nuclear Energy, let's start again. The American Nuclear Society is 70 years old as of October of this year. And we've been involved with professional development, professional R&D, and the use of the technology in energy and then also non-energy applications. We are organized in the sense of having a national organization with a board of directors, your divisions, and various committees. But the work that is done is really done by the professionals that are member and also individuals that are at the local level, as well as the student chapters, and then also some of the international sections that we have as well. We're 10,000 or so strong and growing, and it is an important organization in the larger scheme of things. I like to see it as part of the nuclear enterprise, right? So it has all these various branches in forwarding the mission of the peaceful use of nuclear technology for humankind. We have allies within the United States and then outside of the United States as well, in way of organizations and then governmental sectors, etc., as well as your businesses in this space as well. So we come together to advance the technology, to help your new and emerging nations use the technology in a very peaceful manner, and then also for the expansion. Right? We are in a key moment in time, right? So we're moving, if I were to look at nuclear energy in particular, we're moving from fossil fuel era into an energy transition era. And it's important that we get it right. And it's an energy portfolio that has to have all of the technologies therein. My particular role as president for the American Nuclear Society is as a connector, right? So to bring all those individuals together at the table and to advance the mission of the sector, of the enterprise, I should say, right? And it is to make sure that we are not closing ranks, but actually looking at partners at the international and regional level to make it happen. So I would say, those are some of the key areas that I see for the American Nuclear Society. I joined back in 2005, rolled up my sleeve and got to work. Very appreciative of this organization and the relationship that we have with organizations and educational sector as well. Now, I come from the education sector, so of course, some of my key mandates are in that for my presidency for the year. So we're looking internally, how then do we get the next generation and the next generation? So about human capacity building, generally speaking. And then also, how can we what kind of actions can we take at the international level to make this happen worldwide, right? There are a number of lessons learned and best practices from within the United States, and we want to share that, right? And every country will have its own footprint of how nuclear will look, and there's no reason to go through some of the growing pains that we went through in the establishment of the 70-plus-year-old professional organization. So we're here as a partner to share what we know, to learn from other established and new actors in this space, because fundamentally, I use energy as one of that key components, right? So it is the basis for modern society, and nothing goes without it, right? So we have a crucial role to play in the environment, in society, and how there is an interaction for the betterment of all.
Lisa, thank you so much. And really love hearing about the work that you're doing, especially in stakeholder engagement, both in the United States and then also here internationally. And Jatia, I'd like to turn to you. The panel, I don't think has mentioned the national labs yet, unless you could agree on. But there's such a crucial piece of this puzzle. So talk to us about the role of the national laboratories and the relationship between the laboratories and the industry.
Well, first of all, I'm very excited to be here. Despite a very long flight, but very happy to be here in Kenya for my very first time. I don't think we've mentioned the national labs explicitly, but the activities that have been discussed by my colleagues definitely involve the national laboratories. Lisa and I have known each other for a while, and a lot of the ANS, American Nuclear Society members, are from the national labs, and that's part of our mission is to contribute to professional societies and also to government objectives and helping them establish that. We are federally funded research and development centers, so we are not federal employees at the 17 DOE national laboratories, but we are federal contractors. So we work for the government. We also work with private sector as well. Honestly, when we talk about the national laboratories, they've been described as the crown jewels of research and development in the U.S. So they are charged with looking at and tackling global challenges, the problems that aren't necessarily business effective. So, Tesla will definitely come in, Google will come in, and if there is a business and a market, they are there. The national labs are there for the greater good of the U.S. to tackle these larger problems. Some of the technologies that have come out of the national labs, we can only take them so far because we are not a business company at the national labs. So if you've ever driven a Chevy Bolt, that battery technology was developed at the national laboratories. We don't sell Chevy Bolts at national labs, so we license that technology for the greater good and for business efforts. Also, basic science recently discovered the latest element, Tennessee, element 117 at Oak Ridge. I see my Oak Ridge colleague pumping her fist. So we do those things. There's no money in discovering a new element at the beginning, but those things are the basic building blocks of larger things to come. So we tackle those larger problems. So specifically at Idaho National Laboratory, we are a NE, a nuclear energy laboratory. So we work a lot in the programs that Mike Goff spoke about, the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Project. We also have the Nuclear Reactor Innovation Center everything that has to do with nuclear energy and nuclear power is the primary focus of Idaho National Laboratory. We also do wraparound technologies that complement and extend nuclear power and nuclear energy in the national and homeland security realm, which is the realm I work in, primarily focused on nuclear nonproliferation, and also in energy and environment and science and technology writ large. I do want to call out one specific wraparound technology that has to do with national and homeland security that involves nuclear, and that's nuclear cybersecurity. So we've had a lot of incidents, and as my colleagues were talking about, nuclear power and nuclear energy and energy security is national security and international security as well. So one of the wraparound focus areas that we at Idaho National Laboratory are focusing on is cybersecurity. We recently published, DOE recently published, and INL had a large contribution to a cyber-informed engineering strategy. And this is looking at our different systems like nuclear to not retrofit security and cyber into some of these designs, but to think about it at the design phase. So you're not faced with putting out a system and relying on this for energy security and electricity production, and then being at the mercy of cyber attacks or infrastructural or operational technology attacks. So those are some of the things that the national labs are doing and being forward-leaning to look at to support not only nuclear energy, but its deployment and its successful operation. I'm going to stop there because I can go all day about nuclear cybersecurity, but I know we have other questions to get to, and I'll circle back. Thanks.
Jatiya, thank you so much. And I'm going to say what I always say when we talk about Idaho National Laboratory and the National Lab System, but if anyone has the opportunity to visit our national labs, please take it. Dawn, I'd like to go to you because you've worked in the nuclear energy industry for many decades. So in your view, how has industry helped to drive innovation?
I hope you noticed the many decades. Let me put this a little bit in context. I had the privilege and pleasure of serving in Admiral Rickover's Navy, submarine nuclear Navy for 10 years, starting in 1970. So that should give you some concept. And then in 1980, I went to work for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission as a director there responsible for the licensing of the plants post the 3 Mile Island event. And interestingly enough, we had a number of plants that had their construction license, but we didn't have any movement on low power or full power licenses, which were the requirement of 10 CFR Part 50. And so I was responsible, since I was the new guy on the block and had no axe to grind, knew nothing, knew nobody, and came out with no frame of reference to issue 52 licenses in 60 months. Well, I failed. It was 52 licenses in 61 months. And I was held accountable for that, I might add. But nonetheless, we were successful in that. And in 1985, I decided I would go out and start a consulting firm, Excel Energy Services, before Microsoft. Nonetheless, over the last almost 4 decades, this coming spring, I have seen a lot. We have an ad in the United States from an insurance company that says, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. And I have, and my company has, and it wasn't all pretty. But I think the important thing to note is that if you look at where the United States was, if you look at where we were even in the late 70s and coming into the 80s, in 1985, our capacity factor average was 67%. Today, it's over 94%. How did we get there? Through working together, through collaboration, through coordination, through communication, through working towards creative and innovative solutions that not only enhanced safety and security, not only improved performance and efficiency, but also reduced cost of operation of the nuclear facilities. And what regulator, what owner-operator, and what stakeholder doesn't want to have that happen? So we were actually working towards solutions that were beneficial to all the parties engaged and involved. So I've seen significant changes through the implementation of initiatives that facilitated all of this to get to where we are, to enhance and improve this. My company has also, I've seen us do things with new nuclear. Now, new nuclear wasn't just starting with UAE, even though we had a significant role in the United Arab Emirates with their activities of innovation and creativity and starting from scratch. It's amazing what you can do when you don't have to deal with something that somebody left you. to work out mechanisms and processes and programs and procedures to facilitate getting to where you want to go in a more efficient and effective manner. Having said that, a number of countries were building new nuclear, maybe not necessarily new like we think about it, maybe Gen 3 plus or with SMRs or advanced reactors, but new nuclear over the last several decades. And we've had the privilege to participate in that. So what have we seen? We have seen that with the right kind of people, as you heard this morning, with the right impetus, with the right governmental support, with the right intent on moving forward to truly have a successful nuclear program, that it can be done, that there are things that can be brought to bear, that we've learned a great deal of lessons, that we've gone through a number of things. We've seen what works and what doesn't and why. And I think it's important for you to note that we in the United States wish to be your partners. We are proud of our African brothers and sisters. We are proud to be here and to work with you. We are proud to be a part of your nuclear future. And with that, our global nuclear future. Because in reality, just as Jennifer and everyone has said, we are a relatively small family of people who care about what we do, who have a impetus to be doing things with a discipline, with an approach for perfection to the extent possible, with a demand and desire to do the very best job possible. I am proud to be in this industry. I am privileged to be on this panel, and more than that, I'm honored to be here with my brothers and sisters of Africa, and we look forward to bringing you to the successes and more of what we've already discovered over the last 70 years. Thank you.
Don, thank you so much. I'd like to move into talking a little bit about the role of policy. And Rian, obviously you've worked on any number of policies as part of the Biden-Harris administration that will enable nuclear energy innovation. And additionally, it seems like the two big challenges of the last 4 years have been energy security on the one hand and decarbonization on the other. But in a recent conversation, you also brought up the role of resilience. And so I'd like to hear your thoughts on these issues.
Sure, thank you. The way I have been thinking about energy security versus resilience, and the language is sometimes interchangeable, but often when you think about energy security, it's this, wanting to have your kind of sovereign, independent ability to have your own electricity. Energy resilience is making sure that the electrons are coming to your homes on a bad day, right? So Jatia talked about cyber attacks. We know that in the United States and in most countries, we're not resilient against cyber attacks, kinetic attacks, even bio threats. We all lived through the pandemic, and so you can imagine the lessons learned. But if enough people don't go to work because of some really bad bio threat, you can imagine that could impact the grid. So it's really important to have energy resilience, and what nuclear reactors can offer you, especially in their ability to have kind of a black start and being able to be isolated, is indeed energy resilience. So that's kind of the definitional piece. So let me talk to you a little bit about what we've been doing in the administration as a U.S. government, to try to ensure that we have enabled the deployment of U.S. technology domestically for energy resilience and security, with an eye towards, of course, exporting it to our partners and friends for those same purposes. And we've done a lot. When I was at the Nuclear Energy Summit, and actually being here, it kind of feels like the Olympics. If you guys have watched the Olympics, if you saw the Team USA game and Steph Curry kind of hitting 5 threes in a row, that's how this administration, in my mind, has approached nuclear. We've done quite a few different things. I'll walk through a few of them. You've heard folks mention quite a few. So number one, the Civil Nuclear Credit Program, which prevents the premature retirement of reactors due to economic conditions. Dr. Goff spoke to that. And then now this morning mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act, which provides investment tax credits, including the creation of a program within the DOE Loans Program Office that's being used for a $1.5 billion loan to repower Palisades, which is in Michigan. And now mentioned the bipartisan infrastructure law, which provides $2.5 billion for advanced reactor demonstrations that the Department of Energy funds. The President this year signed into law the ADVANCE Act of 2024, which promotes the deployment of new advanced reactors. Those are just a few of the kind of key pieces, and there's more to do. And for us, it truly is a pivotal time. I'll tell you a story. We hosted a White House Domestic Deployment Summit a few months ago, and it was co-led by Nana, myself, our colleagues on the National Security Council. And I had the intent of the summit was to highlight the collective progress that's being made between public and private sectors. And I had the honor to chair a panel of end users. And so sitting kind of next to me, I had, I think, Microsoft, Dow Chemical, which is a major industrial in the United States, and the Department of Defense. I think this is the only time those three institutions have sat next to each other on a panel. The reason why I had them together on a panel is because these are all entities that really care about resilient energy, right? They really want to make sure that the electrons flow to their applications. Let me talk a little bit about, and by the way, at that White House Deployment Summit, the U.S. Army announced their intent to explore the deployment of a program for multiple reactors in U.S. Army bases. It makes sense. I think we've seen parts of the Department of Defense, we've seen other oil and gas companies, we've seen tech companies really interested, for example, in microreactors that may require infrequent refueling, some of them able to provide continuous stable electricity for 8 years without having to do anything. Talk about resilience. Let me talk a little bit about data centers and AI. I think it's important because it's certainly one of the things that's catching our attention at the White House. And for data centers specifically, nuclear energy provides enticing advantages because of its resilient nature. As I mentioned before, modern reactor designs come in many sizes, which can be perfectly paired to data center needs that power artificial intelligence. And, you know, for us, we're seeing growing data center usage, of course. So the estimates, I think today, data centers consume 1% to 2% of U.S. annual electricity consumption. And many national estimates suggest that data center loads could double in the United States by 2030. And with AI, which currently represents about 40% of data center loads. Although there's uncertainty into these forecasts, you know, we recognize that nuclear energy really can provide those clean, resilient electrons for the AI community. And not only that, what nuclear provides you when you couple it with a data center is high-quality, high-paying jobs for decades, as was noted before. In addition, I'll note that some SMR designs are able to load follow, this is the ability to change power generation to match electricity needs. AI data centers find that very compelling because depending on their cycles of whether they're training their AI versus using it for inference, for when you're querying ChatGPT, I personally contribute to that demand on the weekends. I use ChatGPT all the time. I hope many of you do as well. And Gemini and other companies. I can't preference one. So listen, I'll end by saying that there's a lot more to do. I think the United States, we're really in a good position to seize this moment. You know, I didn't explicitly mention the national labs or the American Nuclear Society. Number one, to not steal their thunder. But indeed, I think it was brought up earlier in a few times, the theme of people. Both of these institutions, the American Nuclear Society, 10,000 scientists and engineers and professionals. You know, I grew up in that society as a nuclear engineer myself. I think I joined in 2003. And this is a society that provides standards and benchmarks and connecting. And then, of course, the national labs execute the majority of the funding within the Department of Energy on this topic, including the Idaho National Laboratory. At the end of the day, it is about people. And as Jatia noted, they are the crown jewels because this is the only place where you have a multidisciplinary group of people with application expertise and tremendous facilities. And it's the same thing with the American Nuclear Society. It really is about the people. And so I think we're positioned. I recognize that it's not just about public-private, it's about NGOs, it's about the FFRDCs, and it really is going to take an entire ecosystem to really deploy at the rate that we want to meet these national security, resilience, and of course, climate goals. Thank you.
Rian, thank you so much. Lisa, I'd like to get into your other role, which is a professor at NC State University, and talk to us a little bit about the relationship between the nuclear energy industry, the universities and academia, and workforce development. And how is the industry working to develop its workforce, and how is academia working to answer that call?
So I like to think of all these various pillars that we have, right? We've got the national laboratories, you've got government, you have industry itself, and you have education. And I'm going to expand it beyond universities to include community colleges, trade schools, and then also the K-12 space. So that would be your primary all the way to your secondary school system. That makes up the nuclear enterprise, right? We are talking about the technology, we're talking about the scholarship, R&D, etc., across all of them. And they come together quite nicely for the United States and beyond under that umbrella, right? So when I think about the universities and their role in this enterprise itself, they are the producers of those people, right? And those people make policies and then also products that then we deploy for the betterment of society as a whole. So we are in the business working with organizations and with government and with the national laboratories in preparing the next generation of professionals. And then also supporting the innovation that comes out of being in that space, in an educational space, and having the mentors both on campuses and then also in industry or organizations. So I capture the national laboratories as well as government agencies in helping them grow and thrive as individuals that then will continue to contribute to the larger mission of utilizing nuclear science and technology. So for me, when I think of, and I'll give you an example, right? So when I came into the industry, I've been at NC State Nuclear Engineering Program for, I think this is my 21st year. And it is about the classroom, the classes. It's about the laboratory experiences as well, that training that happens, best practices, both in and outside of the laboratory that will follow the new professional for the rest of their lives, right? And it's just fulfilling to see a student come in not too sure about themselves and giving them the tools that they put into that toolkit that they will continue to add to the toolkit and that they will share as they move on, progress within education and then beyond, right? And to meet some of those individuals now and see the excellence that they are exuding in the work that they do day in, day out. It's fantastic, right? So I think if I were to classify what we do for the enterprise as a whole, is that we help to nurture the next generation of professionals that are going to contribute to the technology as a whole and advance it way beyond what we can even envision now. So Rianne said that it's all about people, right? It's about the people, and those individuals are making the policies, and those individuals are working on the various products, right? And we all come together under the nuclear enterprise to do that job, right? We're an incubator of sorts, right? We are an advancer of the technology. And we work in partnership to give those experiences to students and other professionals, right? Because we have to think of it long term. We are continually learning, and if we're not, we are supposed to, right? And the universities play that role, and I expand again, colleges play that role, and then we're looking at the younger generation and getting them involved and excited about the technology, and why not do nuclear chemistry and nuclear physics and mathematical modeling, etc., in the primary, secondary space. Right? Why not? Right? So that by the time they get to the university and the colleges, who knows what they will be contributing at that point, because we're engaged with them earlier and often. So the universities play a very key role. Colleges, community colleges, trade schools, and then we're looking at that K-12 space and the role that they play as well in advancing the industry as a whole. There's something about a student that comes onto a university campus that may have a research reactor or goes into any of the other laboratories, and they're excited. They're making that connection of what they're learning in the classroom to how it is utilized, right? And then they go home and they share that excitement with their parents that may or may not have some hesitations around nuclear, or maybe they do have a science and engineering background. But it's a reinforcement of the role that STEM plays in our enterprise and in other enterprises as well, right? So I wouldn't be anywhere else, right? So a number of individuals have asked, so how long have you been in the education environment? And I'd probably say 21 and counting, because I see my role as public outreach, and then also providing the environment for students to thrive, that then become professionals. And the one thing that I ask of them is that you pay it forward, right? So you're paying it forward by reaching back and kind of mentoring and advocating for the next generation. And then also you're also advocating for the technology and its use across a number of different enterprises. So that's the role I see education plays, more specifically universities, but I don't like to narrow it to universities because your community colleges, your trade schools, and then also your pre-college space play a vital role in what we do every day and the direction in which we will go into the future.
Lisa, thank you so much. And I think that this panel is really painting such a vivid picture of this puzzle and just how interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary it is, and how all the puzzle pieces fit together. So, Jatia, I'd like to turn back to you. The Atlantic Council over the last several years has had the privilege of working very closely with the Idaho National Laboratory on the Frontiers Project, which looks at first mover states in the Mountain West and the economic development opportunities associated with advanced nuclear technologies. So talk to us a little bit about the state and regional economic benefits of nuclear energy.
Sure. So I'm very excited about the Frontier Project. It's a great example of working at a grassroots level with stakeholders in local communities. So right now there's 3 focus areas in Idaho, Wyoming, and Alaska. And so we gather regional, local stakeholders to discuss and come up with solutions instead of being told or giving a mandate from on high. It's really working with the people who this will affect. And I want to say that one of the success stories is actually the Wyoming project. In June, the Natrium Sodium Cooled Fast Reactor broke ground. And that is a big deal. So this is going to be a local power producing project. It is in conjunction with a coal-fired plant that is going to phase itself out, that is the plan, and turn to nuclear energy. And this was something that was developed by the reactor developers, TerraPower, which is a Bill Gates company, and local stakeholders who are already seeing, yes, we need to address climate change. Yes, we need to diversify our energy sources. We also need to look into new things. They talked about economic development. They talked about workforce development and how this will revitalize the community. It's really a great example. That's something that we're trying to replicate in other places. And is an example for bringing in new ideas to newcomer countries, to not go down the same path. You know, there's new reactor designs, there's new sites, there's cogeneration, all of these opportunities, and really look to what the community needs. Rather than, there's this national need, but it's really at the community level. When you build these sites, it's going to go in a community. It's going to affect that community. So that community at the regional, local, state level, and different levels that you have here in Africa and Kenya and Ghana and all of these newcomer countries need to look at what fits for that organization, for that local community. I personally believe that the best efforts are grassroots efforts when the community can tell you what they need and go to the government and go to the people who can make it happen. I think it's a smoother transition, a smoother process. Also, if it's a grassroots effort, most of the time you have that trust that's already built because that need and that requirements are coming from the community. So just want to give kudos, thank you for partnering, and I hope to have more great stories that come out of the Frontier Project and to have it held up as an example of how to get these projects up and going from the stakeholders who will be involved.
Jatia, thank you so much. And Don, talk to us a little bit about the work that your company is doing in the regulatory space, and give us some insights into ideas about regulatory harmonization.
Thank you, Jennifer. You know, interestingly enough, as I said before, having been a regulator, and then also having been an engineering officer and a senior reactor operator on a nuclear submarine, and then having an SRO certification, it gives you some real insight to what the individuals that are owning and operating these are. And in order to be able to enable them to be successful in safely operating these facilities, you have to give them tools and mechanisms to make that happen. As I said earlier, over the last 4 decades, we've done a number of things to enhance the current fleet to get it there. In new nuclear build, our involvement has mostly been in setting up the ministry, if one didn't exist, or to enhancing and improving an existing ministry to understand, to get all of the benefits from what has gone before them, to establish a regulatory authority. Now, in many countries, we've come in and we've set up a regulatory authority from scratch. All the programs, processes, procedures, people selection, all the mechanisms to facilitate being a responsible, world-renowned, open, transparent, and respected regulator. Also the owner-operator. In many cases, these new countries have never owned and operated a nuclear power plant of any kind. Some may have with a VVR, Russian design or some other design, but most of them haven't operated any kind. So we set up all the training and to facilitate all the programs, processes, procedures there. Again, all the selection of activities to facilitate making them successful. And then the last thing we do in there, the fourth one, is establishing a local supply chain, enabling the local supply chain with their current activities to be successful, allowing them to get an N stamp, allowing them to work under the auspices of an NQA program by training them, integrating those kinds of mechanisms to facilitate their being successful. We currently work in 30 countries. We currently work in 9 of them under the auspices of the State Department, under FIRST, Phoenix, or NEXT. We are also successfully working in a number of countries where we're getting them very far along to move forward. We've helped a number of our recent clients get their 1, 2, 3 agreements. The most important thing I would say about that is we are the strategic and trusted partner of the country we come to work for. It is our responsibility to ensure that they get what they're looking to get. As was said earlier, not all the countries have the same needs, and not all the SMRs or mini reactors or microreactors are created equal. They have strengths and weaknesses. Because we're technology and work with essentially all of them, including the large build, we are able to do technology selection, which we have done in the last 14 countries we've worked for, to facilitate setting out with the country, just as you said, what do you want? Do you want electricity? Do you want desalination? Do you want district heating? Do you want industrial process heat? Do you want medical applications? Do you want agricultural applications? What industrial? What do you want the next 10, 30, 50, and 100 years because of the long-term partnership? And then with that information, through an application of a number of specific criteria, we can down select to the ones that best meet that activity, and then interface to get the best cost, price, schedule, and assure the quality. Thank you.
Don, thank you so much. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the opportunities in the nuclear energy industry as we look forward to the future. Rian, we often talk about the role of government in spurring innovation and helping to create a demand signal. And sometimes we call that getting over the valley of death in innovation or building a bridge to bankability, depending on who you're talking to. But how does this apply to fuel and the nuclear energy supply chain? And talk to us a little bit about your work in the U.S. government to overcome some of these challenges.
Thank you for that question. So on August 2nd, 1939, Albert Einstein and physicist Leo Szilard both wrote a letter to President Franklin Roosevelt about and I quote, new and important source of energy, which heralded the promise of nuclear energy, launched the development of nuclear weapons, of course forever altered the course of history. In that letter, Einstein wrote and implored the President of the United States to, and I quote, pay particular attention to the problem of securing a supply of uranium. So 83 years later, we are still paying particular attention to securing a robust supply of uranium. Dr. Goff earlier mentioned how the Department of Energy has issued a request for proposals, drawing from the multi-billion government-led investment, coupled with a Russian ban on uranium, intended to jumpstart in the United States new enrichment capacity and to signal a U.S. commitment to long-term growth in our nuclear sector. And so that's just kind of one example of something we've been focused on, and it's quite simple. If you start doing the math of tripling nuclear energy in the United States, and you do the calculation, you can notionally take small reactors, big reactors, but you figure out how much uranium you need per gigawatts. And you start figuring out how many metric tons of natural uranium, enriched product, fuel fabricated product, and it is a staggering number. I have the plots, I won't bore you with the details. And so it was clear that this is probably the most important part of the supply chain that we need to focus on. And I'm happy to report that I think we're leading the way, and I think we're going to be successful. But we're not going to stop there. We're doing our homework across other parts of the supply chain. And by the way, other parts of the ecosystem, right? There's enabling conditions that will enable the large deployment and accelerated deployment of nuclear reactors. Folks have talked about workforce is an important one. We consider that actually an important part of the supply chain. People have talked about licensing, and there's quite a few things that we're still thinking about doing. I'll mention a few things that we have done already. Is number one, convene end users, and not just to help aggregate demand, to ensure that there is an order book for the deployment of multiple technologies that the United States has, but in addition, to spur that supply chain growth, right? To spur companies to start investing in the supply chain components beyond just the nuclear material. Nana and I, both co-lead a project management and delivery working group led out of the White House, intended to draw from leading experts across the not just nuclear but mega project construction industry to help identify opportunities to proactively mitigate sources of cost and schedule overrun risk. So we're doing our homework and not just looking at our kind of internal nuclear industry, but looking outside. We are looking to build partnerships on the supply chain. We're primarily focused, as Dr. Goff mentioned, for uranium. We have 5 countries that we're working with. But on the broader supply chain issue, we're working with our friends in the north in Canada, and we're looking to expand our partnership there across the board on all of these issues. We're looking at, I mentioned artificial intelligence, we're looking at using AI to enable innovation, to include things related to permitting and other topics. And then finally, we are focusing on, we're starting to focus a little bit more on workforce development. We recognize that even in the United States, despite us having quite a few nuclear engineering programs, we know that in order to achieve those deployment goals of tripling nuclear energy, we're going to need more and more, not just nuclear engineering students, but skilled workers across the board. And so the Department of Energy and others are starting to think about more that we can do to ensure that that's not a bottleneck for the United States. And I'll end there.
Thanks, Rihanna. I'd like to stay for just one more moment on the workforce theme, because in the United States, we often talk about the nuclear energy industry being in need of a workforce. But one of my key takeaways from last year's USANES conference in Ghana, and then now looking at this audience and seeing so many students here today, is that Sub-Saharan Africa actually has a workforce that needs an industry. So please share your thoughts on the topic and how can the industry meet the demands and meet the needs of the workforce?
So I'd like to change that slightly, right? In the sense of you've got this people power, right? And this can then drive industry. So this morning I met with the Kenya Nuclear Society and then also the Radiological Protection Association. And we were talking about how then can we take this workforce, or these students that are wanting to go into the workforce here, how can they help to push industry? Just a slight push, right? And how then can they innovate to be part of the enterprise itself, right? So we talked this morning about how then do you engage with students, the role of educators and counselors, etc., in targeting the areas that, of course, here prepares for the industry that we're about to launch. I was very excited about the signing of the agreement. I'm very excited by the summit. I'm very excited about the various trips and the partnerships that we are forging that have been forged already. I look at Ghana as an example from Summit 1, and a reminder that we're not really new. Africa is not really new to nuclear, right? That Kwame Nkrumah back in the 60s set us on a path. It has been derailed to a certain degree. However, the contributions and the development of the workforce never stopped. And they're in other industries. They are in the regulators here. They are in your homegrown companies and organizations, and then also in your international organizations that have a presence here on the continent. For me, that is such a good problem to have, that you have individuals that are looking to contribute to the industry and that they need to continue to work on human capacity building, right? And that happens in your educational space, but then also in your industry space as well, and your government spaces. So for me, it's a people push to get us off the ground faster, but then it's not faster, really, right? Because it's more of that proverb that has been said many times before, right? If you want to go fast, go it alone. But if you want to go far, then it's a group that you have to bring together. And I think that's the point at which the continent is at, where we've got the people power, the additional push to local industry, to the development of, and then also partnership with other organizations out there that want some authentic partnerships here for the betterment of the nuclear enterprise as a whole, both on the continent, regionally, and then internationally.
Lisa, thank you so much. Jatia, we're so fortunate to have you here representing the Idaho National Laboratory, and we're also so fortunate to have a great delegation from Oak Ridge National Laboratory who spent the last 2 days leading our workshops. And I'm always so happy whenever I'm traveling internationally and I see people from our national laboratories. So talk to us about the role of the U.S. national laboratories in engaging internationally and helping new to, or maybe not so new to, nuclear countries building their own civil nuclear programs.
So I will tell you that Idaho National Laboratory does a lot of engagement both with industry and internationally. So I took the time to write out some of the reactor projects that I know is currently working on. So we are operating 4 nuclear reactors. We have over 50 nuclear reactors at Idaho National Laboratory. We have the privilege of being in the Mountain West and having 890 square miles of land on which to do a lot of different projects and hand-on at-scale projects. So currently, in the next 10 years, we have 6 reactor projects that we plan to deploy, including the multifluoride reactor experiment, Oklo, X Energy, Natrium, working within Wyoming. And so we have this, also the Pele project with the U.S. Department of Defense, and our Marble project, which is sponsored by US DOE. So we do a lot of domestic partnership with industry. Also, I can tell you that INL is committed to collaborating, continuing to collaborate in Africa. So last year in Ghana, we actually had our Chief Executive Officer, our lab director, John Wagner, who attended the Ghana USANES. So I arm wrestled him to come this year and won out. But we are committed to continuing to participate in USANES because for us, and for me personally, Africa is the future. Not only in nuclear energy, but in a lot of different realms. They hold the human resources, they hold a lot of natural resources that the U.S. is going to, and the world is going to come to depend on. So naturally, they are a partner. Specifically, we are looking to partner with whoever in Africa would like to develop nuclear energy. We see a lot of great projects that are starting and a lot of great stakeholder activities, such as the side meetings and workshops that are going on here. I've had the opportunity in working with DOE and National Nuclear Security Administration to work internationally. I've been to Ghana a few times and had some South African colleagues who I've had the opportunity to collaborate with. Just most recently, I think a couple of weeks ago, we had a few sub-Saharan African colleagues from Nigeria and also South Africa at a nuclear cybersecurity workshop. So we work not only multilaterally through the IEA, but also bilaterally, and we welcome the opportunity to expand that. Talking about the frontier projects, it might be time for a frontier project in sub-Saharan Africa to replicate the same success that we've been having in the Mountain West. So lots of opportunities. I think this is the key region. This is where it's happening here. You mentioned all of the young students here and the workforce and everything that they have, and they're just ready for opportunity. So I think the U.S. is ready to provide that opportunity, and I know as well, and also all of the other national laboratories.
Well, I couldn't agree more that it's time for Frontiers Project in Sub-Saharan Africa. So tell me when and I'll be there. And Dawn, I'd like to ask you to share your impressions of how Kenya and the continent can unlock benefits that are similar to those realized by nuclear energy in the United States.
Thank you. If I could, I'd like to answer the question I didn't fully answer before. You asked about the licensing tool that we were creating and how that was going to work. As you're probably well aware, whenever you talk to anyone that wants to finance, has any consideration of financing a new nuclear plant, they want to know about two major risks: construction risk and license risk. Having seen that and been around for the last 4 decades plus, with, if you count everything, over 5 decades working in this industry and seeing what does and what doesn't work with licensing and regulatory approaches, we decided within the company to create our own, because we have hundreds of people that have thousands of years of experience in having seen this. We work very closely with 24 regulatory authorities, and so as a result, having been on Cordell, which is a WNA, World Nuclear Association entity that was tasked with trying to find ways for standardization and harmonization, and has been in place for the last 14 years. And of course, my great colleagues at IEA have an initiative too. But having been on the ground and done so much licensing, whether it was with AP 1000 in the United States, or we did a lot of things with the GE, SPWR, APWR. We worked with all 9 major large bills. We worked with NuScale. We worked with every single technology. And so as a variation, we've seen what works and doesn't. So we created an approach that allows for clear-cut guidance for a regulator to be able to determine what he or she can take advantage of, what they can utilize as a part of their licensing of a technology that has already been licensed or designed, certified in the country of origin or in another country, like X Energy and a few others, BWRX 300, whose country of origin may be the U.S., but they're utilizing the Canadian Nuclear Society as a basis of nuclear industry and regulator, And so as a result, we worked with them, and we had CNSC, the Canadian regulator, and the USNRC, the U.S. regulator, review the process. And they found it acceptable as a mechanism to go forward. We're already applying it, and we're discovering that we think it could cut the licensing process in half, but still provide for the highest levels of safety and security, obviously also for safeguards to ensure that all of our stakeholders are addressing the best things. Now, I just wanted to answer that. And what was your other question?
Talk to us about how Kenya and the continent can unlock the same types of benefits that we enjoy in the United States from nuclear energy. Excellent.
I had the privilege to work with many of you in a very informal manner in Kenya and Ghana, and I'm so impressed. I am so absolutely impressed with your capability, your competence, your drive, your innovation, your creativity, your willingness to drive this for your own particular country, and I think you should be very proud of that. As we look at what you've already accomplished, whether it's the ministry, the regulatory authority, as you move forward with your owner-operator, and as you begin to figure out how can your local supply chain become an actual ecosystem with each of the individual countries, we have discovered already that you have already begun to think of a number of things that are country-specific. And what we've been doing with them, Jennifer, is bringing about some of the global best practices to add to that, to talk to you about if you're going to move forward with X, how can that be enhanced and improved by adding Y? So what we're looking for is working with you in all these collaborative measures to be successful. Now, if you look at your two countries and the activities you've already done, the accomplishments you already have, again, I say to you, you can be very proud of yourself. I certainly am very proud of you. I think you've set an example for the rest of the African continent, and it is my sincere hope that many, many countries will follow you and follow your example through that. And one of the things that I heard being talked about earlier was coordination and collaboration. And in addition to many other things Excel Services Corporation or Excel Energy Services does, we coordinate the owners groups in the United States for the B and the PWRs, where we share everything: engineering, operations, licensing, regulatory, and we resolve these issues to the extent practical once, whether it applies to one plant, to one vendor type, to both vendor types, or across the entire activity. And now we're being asked to do this in Korea and Japan, leveraging and recognizing on what all the things that have been learned. We can do the same thing in Africa. I heard Mike and many others talk about the fact that the African continent is the next place to be. I know many people tell me, no, Africa's not going to be able to move forward. And we heard Bill say, why not Africa? Absolutely. Why not Africa? The fact is, you have as good or better people as anyone. You have innovative approaches, and I'm very proud to have the privilege to work with you. So to answer your question a little bit shorter, we are working with them with their current activities to facilitate, again, implementing the global best practices to make sure that they are successful from the get-go.
Don, thank you so much. So unfortunately, we're nearly out of time, but I'd like to move into just a very quick lightning round and ask each of you to answer the same question in maybe 30 seconds, if possible. What is the most important thing that the United States can do right now to help Kenya achieve its nuclear energy aspirations?
30 seconds, all right. Two things. Number one, I think U.S. can help with helping establish how to deploy safe and secure nuclear technology, and that includes, the regulatory and operational capacity. At the end of the day, even if financing is unlocked, one of the longest poles in the tent is the ability for a country to independently regulate and operate reactors, and so those timelines can be reduced with help from industry, with help from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, with help from the State Department FIRST program, with help from OECD, with help from the IAEA, but that is all contingent upon the regulator being staffed up and having those resources for uptake. So I want to make point number one. I think point number two, this is something we can all work on together, but maybe industry, is helping a country understand the opportunities for localization. Undersecretary Jenkins talked about this, but for example, Kenya's manufacturing base is probably likely able to produce some of the elements critical to nuclear sector expansion. And so it's important to help understand, what are the parallels between your industrial base and how that can be linked to being able to localize some of the manufacturing supply chain for nuclear energy. It's useful and important because not only does it provide jobs, but it provides high quality employment and ups the local manufacturing standards for a country. So to me, those are the two things.
Thank you, Rian. Lisa?
So the American Nuclear Society is here for partnership with regards to research and development for products and also for services, as well as on the educational front, some of the best practices and lessons learned from our work within the United States, and then also partnership on the international level in other regions of the world. We are here to take those steps forward. For example, when I look at the educational space, we have developed a number of different products that we're utilizing right now for the American population, right? I'm thinking of when we've developed the Navigating Nuclear suite of educational pieces in collaboration with Discovery Education, utilizing their particular platform for nuclear science and technology lessons, right? And we specifically made sure that it wasn't behind a paywall. So it is available to everyone to utilize and to add to. So as we're developing new instruments, we want to do that collaboratively and put it up on the site. So how then do you inspire the next generation? And I'm always going to talk about the next generation because I do think we always have to have this continual educational process, right? Professional development. And getting the next generation and the next generation to come into play. To be able to go on a virtual field trip of a national laboratory, or going to a utility, or to go into a laboratory, for us to do internet laboratory exercises as well, right? As examples of what is already out there and that we'll continue to add to in the energy and the non-energy space for nuclear science and technology. And then also, certification programs as well, so that continuing education piece. And American Nuclear Society has developed and are implementing or deploying 2 of these sets of courses. The first one will roll out this summer, and we'll be looking at how then it's a Nuclear 101 course. How then do you bring individuals into the industry from other industries, and then those that are already in our industry that need to kind of power up, so to speak, on standards, on the technology itself, and in the research and development piece as well. And we're going to launch this, I believe it's in June that we're going to be launching that. And I see that without any borders, right? Just as we have Navigating Nuclear and it is without any borders, so I see this sort of certification program. So we are here as partners, authentic partners. We're here for long haul, rolling up our sleeves. We've been here already. We have a number of nuclear societies that we have been in collaboration with, and we're continuing with new ones that I've met during this particular visit. And then also a call out to other nations as well, right? We have been in communication with them, so it's just a matter for us to start to get the work done, or continue the work that has already been done, and then to develop new tools and new instruments that are specific for various African countries. Because I think also you look regionally and there will be some commonalities, but it really is locational based, very geographically based, and we're there to work on those particular initiatives.
Lisa, thank you so much. Jatia, how can the United States help?
So I said, amplify, advocate, and empower. Really sharing best practices, sharing what we know from research and development or other standpoints. That's my big standpoint. Also helping to build capacity. Partnering. If we have research facilities or if we have training facilities, then share those capacities with people who are newcomers. If we didn't start with all these capacities, it took time to build them. And it's going to take time, and we have those, and we should share. And then also outreach to public to humanize nuclear energy and what it means to work in the sector.
Thank you so much. And Don, final word?
And I would say, pretty much based on what you heard my colleagues say, because you see we have the government and we have our technological society and then we have the labs. We all have to work collaboratively, and I suppose I represent the industry. And if you look at all this, we really can't stand without each other. The fact is, we must all be in collaboration to facilitate that, and so must you. What we've discovered in many countries is that despite the best efforts, sometimes something was lost in the translation between the different organizations. So one of the things we assure you and want you to do is to have a roadmap, not only for each one of your entities and organizations, but an overall roadmap so you can see the schedules, see who's responsible for what when, to make sure you don't inadvertently or unnecessarily hold up something that is so paramount. You are ahead of where we were in the United States. You're starting at a different level. We want to help you. Your success is our success. We're a global nuclear community. Without each other, we can't really go where we want to go. We really can't do what we want to do. I know that it's a privilege for me and all of my colleagues to say to you, We are happy to be here with you, and we look forward to working with you to assure your success.
Thank you, Don, and please join me in thanking the panelists. And now I'd like to invite everyone for lunch, and please listen carefully. Please exit through the doorways on your left so that you can pick up your lunch ticket. And please return by 2 o'clock so that we can resume our programming. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Gordon. And